Hello there, I'm another Magento dev. You know me, I love Magento, right? But I also love JavaScript frameworks like Svelte. Is there a possibility we could theme with Svelte in Magento too? Let's find out. Right then, let's begin. So, can we get a theme going conceptually with something like Svelte? I did a live stream, it was actually yesterday. I'll put a link in the description where I just explored it. It was about an hour, just sort of going through how I'd installed it and how I was prepared to use it in my template, what options you had, and all that type of stuff. This is purely like a condensed version of that on basically just how to get it set up. Now, obviously the prerequisites for this are you've got some experience with JavaScript frameworks. Svelte, obviously, if you've got experience with using Svelte, then you're going to fly through this. But basically what I cover in this video is the tricks and the particular idiosyncrasies of getting Svelte installed with Magento too, because it's not quite what the docs are. You know, Svelte's docs are actually for Magento too. So there is sort of caveats to getting it installed, and that's what I'm going to go through today. So what have we got? Well, we've just got a brand new install of Magento that I did the other day, and I copied the database from my other Magento. I copied the images just so I've got some products and some data, and I've set it to blank theme as well, so I'm not even starting from Luma theme, starting from blank theme, and we're going to try and get a theme going using Svelte. Now, quickly, what is Svelte? Well, Svelte, people call it a framework. I'm going to refer to it as a framework, but it's not actually. I mean, it says it's a framework here, but it's actually just a compiler, because it doesn't use a virtual DOM or anything like that, like what Vue does, for example, or React. It actually just compiles the framework code, so your .svelte and your JavaScripts and any other JavaScript you've got in there, and it compiles it to one JavaScript file basically for output. And because of that, because it's a really sort of optimal file. So my thinking is, if we can get to grips with getting Svelte working with Magento and throw out some of Magento's lesser optimized features, particularly front end, you know, particularly things like the way styles work on the boilerplate themes on Blank and Luma, it's going to be a lot quicker. Hopefully, a lot more performant. And for JavaScript framework lovers out there, guilty, they're lovely to work with. They're really good to work with. Let's get going. Let's get going. So, what's the easiest way to get Svelte installed? Well, it's to use a digit install. This one here is the one I'm going to go for. And what this is going to do is it's going to put basically a scaffolding. It's going to put a scaffolding into my project, what I'm going to be able to tweak to get working with Magento too. So first of all, we need a theme, and I'm going to have to go to it. I've been messing about. Right, and so here's our theme, and here is all of the. I'll just get rid of that. Here is all of the sort of default required files. Okay, but I've got an extra one in there, right? I've got an extra one in there for later, which is my package JSON, which is the package JSON that I use for my Webpack themes. And I've added some extras in there. I've added Svelte in there, and I've added Laravel Svelte and Tailwind as well, because we're going to also, once we've got Svelte installed, we're going to install Tailwind on top of it, get it all compiling together with Webpack. That's the key. So by default, Svelte, and I'll just start doing this, not to keep you waiting. So I'm going to open a terminal in my theme folder, and then I'm going to add a web folder, because I'm going to install Svelte into my web folder, because at least from the perspective of Magento likes all static assets like HTML and JavaScript and CSS. It likes it in a web folder, and I like it in a web folder. So I'm going to bob it in there, and I'm going to jump into that folder, and then I'm going to run my digit install. and I'm going to call it Svelte. So Svelte is going to go into the Svelte folder here. Now Svelte by default uses rollup as its compilation tool, and I can prove it to you, I can show you. So once I've got this installed, look here, it uses rollup, look, and it creates a bundle file. And it's dead simple. You get a public folder here which gives us some clues onto how we're going to have to integrate it with Magento. So a defer script for the bundle, and then it gives you a couple of global CSS files as well. Now we're obviously not going to use any of these, but it gives us a good sort of starting point. It gives us a clue to what we are going to need to do in our Magento theme to get this working on our front end. So that was fairly painless. Svelte is now installed, right? I can actually get rid of some of these files in here, which I'm going to do I am going to do soon, but I'm going to move on to installing Tailwind as well while we're at it. So Tailwind is problematic normally with you know, when working with Magento. The layout files, the XML, it doesn't like some of Tailwind syntax. So although you could install it and use it in templates, you're not going to be able to use it in your layout containers because, as I said, because of the syntax. So it sort of makes it a bit redundant, and you might as well just use Bootstrap and write your CSS for Magento. The workflow seems to be better that way, is the sort of opinion that I've come to. But when you're starting to use frameworks like this in your theme, and conceptually you're starting to go down the route of a sort of a JavaScript framework, Tailwind starts to make more sense, because you will be writing more code from scratch, because the idea would be that you would take away maybe take away the Magento theme in certain areas and inject back in your JavaScript framework. So you're going to have to do a little bit more work than when we've talked about in the past, just extending themes. We're going to actually be sort of rewriting, you know, the concept would be that you would rewrite headers, footers, content, anything you want really in Svelte, and I'm going to show you how to do that, or how to get started with that in a second in this video. Right, and so where are we at? Right, we're going to need also in our theme Tailwind. So I'm gonna get started with getting Tailwind installed, as I said. So Tailwind, again, we've got install docs for that, and we can have a look here. It's dead simple to install, but we've already installed Tailwind by well, we haven't yet. I'm going to set it running now actually. We're going to jump into the main theme folder with an integrated terminal, and I'm going to run yarn. And as I mentioned before, this is now going to install the packages that I've specified in my package JSON in my theme. Tailwind is one of them. So that means on the docs I can skip this step, right? I can skip, sorry, this step. I can skip this step. And the step I'm going to need is to add a config file. And I'm going to add a particular type of config file because I want to show you how to do it, because it doesn't say it there in the docs, and it is useful for me. It is useful. And I'm just going to wait for yarn to quickly run its stuff, and I'm going to install Tailwind config in my theme. So I'm not going to install it in web, I'm going to install it in my theme, because that is where I'm going to be putting my Webpack config, and basically where my package is, where I like to keep my config files, and then I like to keep my static assets in. I'll keep my static assets, sorry, in predominantly in my Svelte folder, and I'm going to compile them outside that folder. So while we're waiting for each run, right, so next I'm going to install into my Svelte theme Tailwind, and if you do the directive of -- full, you get a full version, right? And what a full version is, it's got everything in it what Tailwind's going to use, and you're able to come in here, and if you want, you can reconfigure this quite easily. What it tells you to do in the docs is just install like basically if you just run that one, it just installs the little one, and then you're going to have to like extend it, which is probably better practice. But if you just, for me, because I'm experimenting with this and experimenting with Magento in this, I want to see everything and I want to configure things on the fly, and I can always change that when I want to, when, you know, at any point down in the future. But I would advise starting with the full one, particularly if you're not a Tailwind expert. And basically we can stop at this step here, because this is the compilation of Tailwind, which we don't need. So we can stop at this step, and this step is where we sort of go into the realms of Webpack Magento, and we start to get a little bit more comfortable with doing things the way we've done things in the past in themes, when I've explained on videos how to integrate SAS with Magento themes and stuff like that. So we're going to start and shift a bit towards Webpack and a bit away from Tailwind and Svelte. And what I mean by that is I'm going to add a SCSS file into my Svelte folder, and I'm going to call it app.scss, and in this, for the time being, I'm just going to add Tailwind basically. So I've added Tailwind in there excuse me, and what I'm going to do from that point is, once I've got Webpack set up, it's going to compile Tailwind with Webpack, and it's going to output it into basically where I'd expect my Magento CSS and JavaScript to be. So I'm going to have a CSS file to compile to, and this is in the web folder. So my compilation source is in the script, is in the so I'll move this, I did it in the wrong place. My compilation source is in Svelte, because that's where I'm going to be working, and my compilation destinations are back in the web folder where I would advise putting them for Magento static asset generation and whatnot. So I want a JavaScript file in there as well, and then just for good measure we'll add an images file, because we're probably going to need that in our project in the future. So right, what we're going to do here, hopefully, if I get it set up correctly, my Webpack is going to compile from here. So it's going to compile all of this Svelte, it's going to compile my CSS as Tailwind, and it's going to put it in these two folders here, ready for Magento to pick up the other end and utilize on the front end. So how do we do that? Right, well, we need a Webpack config file, and I'm going to copy this one because it takes me ages to type them out. I've sort of prepared one, and I'm going to bang this in my theme folder. Right, and this looks familiar if you've seen my tutorials on SAS themes before, and Webpack in particular. So what this is doing is this is going web svelte source main, which is web svelte source main, which is my main entry point for my Svelte app at the moment. I'm going to modify this in a minute. I'm going to come back to this folder, the Svelte folder, and talk you through it in a bit more detail on what it means. And it's also doing that with the Svelte directive, which I'm sort of pulling in from this require, which was a package installed using Yarn, and then obviously this is all standard stuff, but I do need to change this theme because I was experimenting with something else. But it does illustrate that you have to name your theme here. So Svelte, and then it's called Svelte theme, and then my SAS is looking in web Svelte SCSS app, where I've just added that file with Tailwind in it. And it is compiling that to web CSS, but it's doing it with Tailwind. And then I've specified in this here my Tailwind config file as well, which lives here, right? And I've got my source maps in case I need them in the future. And then this is the stuff that I advise for Magento workflow, where basically it's going to compile all my static assets to my theme. And then I'd like it on the fly also, before it reloads, to just pop any static assets that it's generated into my static folders in Magento, so I see my changes, you know, on the fly with my auto reload plugin, which is the same one I've used before, which is the Google extension, that Words Embargoed, which is the extension that goes in a browser. It begins with, the browsers begins with the C, but I don't use that one. I use one beginning with B. I use Brave, but it's a sort of a shell for Chrome. Anyway, I digress. So we have got Svelte ready to go, but we don't need all of this for Svelte. We can actually get rid of, for now, the package JSON, because we're not using that one, because that's the one for roll up and installing dependencies to use Svelte within this folder. In a minute we're going to delete this public folder, but we're going to utilize it for a second just as a bit of a guide, right? So that covers anyway the Webpack mix. and CSS. So how do we get Magento to look for these files? And basically we need to replicate this in Magento. So what do we do? Right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a Magento theme folder, and in this folder we're going to add a default head head blocks file. Okay, and in this file, it's pretty standard. Actually, I made a little mistake. I need a layouts file. No, I don't. I need a layout file. So, by the way, I'm just a really good actor. I am doing this on purpose, so everyone gets the point. I'm not making these mistakes on purpose. But on accident, I am making them on purpose. Right then, so I'm going to actually show you this one, which I've been experimenting with. Now, this is removing a lot of stuff, right? But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm gonna hold off on that. But I was removing stuff because I was wanting to work out how much functionality can be, you know, done with Svelte, basically Magento. It turns out quite a lot. But for now, just to sort of keep the front end looking okay, or not looking mental and broken, it's just going to be easier to see what I'm doing on the front end if Magento stays intact for now. So I'm deferring this script just like it says in Tailwind, look, but it is in the header, and I'm also then referencing my CSS file, which will be generated into here soon once I've rang Webpack. So I'm just going to save that for now, and now I'm going to run yarn mix. So I'm in the theme folder and I'm going to run mix, and hopefully it'll compile everything. Yes, look at that, first time, bang on. Right, so it's compiled Tailwind into here, look, you can see entire Tailwind is in here, I'm hoping, I think. We'll come back and see that for certain. And then it's compiled my JavaScript, look, and it's only a little bit at the minute, but this is basically what Svelte outputs, and that's getting picked up now by my browser as well. I'm sure right, I'll just double check something on Tailwind, but first of all let's see what effect that's had on the front end, and then there, that's what I expected to see. See this down here? This is the Svelte app. Oops. This is the Svelte app tutorial, and what it has done for me, Svelte app sort of boilerplate. Look, it's basically appended it to the body, and that's correct. But I ain't showed you yet, but that's what it's after doing. Look, we've got an empty body tag here, and then in my main.js, that's what it's looking for. Look, and this is simply how components will work if you're using Magento 2. You can append this Svelte app to anywhere. Like if you really wanted to be like go mental with it, we could. It's not going to work in there actually. I'll show you something just to get us started. I'll show you two ways of working with it. So that's basically it. That's working now. That's complete, right? I'm not removing any of the. I tell you what, I'll come back to that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a default XML just to illustrate some stuff. And as I say, I have done a live stream on this, which is an hour long, which looks at passing data between components, Svelte components, Magento front end and stuff. This was purely for setup. I want to sort of give you a little bit extra just to show you, some of the sort of possibilities, I suppose, or like methods in which you can approach this. Right, I'm just going to borrow this from another project. Right, so we've seen that it's appending our app. Now, Svelte is so compatible with everything. I mean, it's like a, dare I say it, like a virus. Look, it'll attach itself to anything. and it's really good. You know, there's no compatibility issues or anything here. It's just banging it straight in, which means that it's really flexible and you can use it in many different ways. Now, if I want to, for example, I'll come back to that bit, but say for example I want 2 instances of Svelte, because what we're going to have to do is, what Svelte expects, I suppose, is that everything's just going to be a one body tag, and it's sort of built to get you started for a one-page app. Well, we don't want that in Magento. We want to maybe use it integrated with Magento in some ways. So we might have we could come in here and we might have so we'll create a folder, call it globals, and then in here we could have a header, right, .svelte, and we could also have a footer .svelte, and it's possible then to have your header and footer code saved by Svelte, right? But how do we get that if it wants to look for the body tag all the time? It's just going to start putting things, you know, it's going to look for one tag and stick everything in one tag, but we don't want that. So what we can actually do here, we can change this file around a little bit, just get rid of these props, and we can actually target a couple of different areas, right? So we could target the header and the footer separately, and the way we do that, and I've done it earlier, so I'm going to pull this in. So what I'm doing here is, I'm saying, look, header and footer, I'm grabbing these components. If you watch any other tutorials on Svelte, this is essentially how you do it, except you would probably do it in, you know, app, you know, you put your components in app, or you can use layout files, what have you. But what I'm doing here is, I'm saying, look, find me this element, which is a block I'm about to add, or a block, you know, a block I could have, element by ID, you know, basic JavaScript, and I'm saying add these components to it. Now these tags don't exist currently on my front end, but let's see if I can attach it to something different. So at the moment it was looking for body. Let's just have a quick look, see if I can at least attach the header. I'll need an ID really. I don't want to change that code now. I'll tell you what, we'll add that block in. We'll just do the header. We'll just do the header. So I'll just comment this out for now. Right, comment this out for now, and we'll just put something in the header. So I'll just grab the code from this component, which is in app, and I'll just bob that in the header. So there's something there, and I'll just change this to header so it's clear. Right, and I don't need that for now, and I can probably get rid of this. I'll keep the CSS, but I'll get rid of this. Right, so that's gonna put a H1 tag in the header once it's up and running. And notice I haven't got watch running just yet because I'm not really ready to start just yet. So I'm gonna add a block to the header, which will contain the tag that I need to attach the header to. Right, so I'm just adding it here, and I'm going to get the logo as well. This gives me the possibility to get the logo, and I can show you how to do that. So basically, I'll tell you what, we'll just get rid of this. I don't need this, it's from something else. Right then, so this is my Svelte header block, and then I need a header PHTML. Now I've gone down this road, so in here we'll do templates, and then in here we'll do header PHTML, and then in here simply we'll have a div tag with the ID header in it. Ah, right, silly, I ain't compiled it. So I'm going to run yarn mix, and actually I'm going to watch it from now on. Yarn watch, make sure that goes through, yeah, and then I can now do my auto reload. So my auto reload plugin will work with yarn watch. Right then. So, still down here. Let's have a look why. So it was meant, now is my header inner actually present, or do I need to refresh some caches? it's present, it's just not sticking to it. Let's have a look why that might be. Where is header inner actually? Header inner is up here in the header where I'd expect it to be, so I need my app to append to header inner. Why isn't it? Header inner, new header, export constant, that's all alright. Wonder if I need to, I know what I might need to do. I think it might be my static assets. So this is a little tip when you're developing. If it works, it's a little tip. If it doesn't, it's useless information. But my main JS in here might not have updated, so I'm just going to delete it, and it sometimes gives it a kick when you're in developer mode. If I refresh that, yeah, brilliant. So it's done it, right? It's moved it. So all that did there basically was got that to refresh in my static assets, so I saw it on the front end. So now if I make some changes, let's see if live reload's working, and then jobs are good one. So say for example I make a change to the header, there we go, it's changing on the fly, and that's working within a Svelte component as well. So I talked about passing some data, so extra bonus in this tutorial, I hope you've stuck with us, is how do I get data. So how can I get the logo showing in my component here? Right, well, I prepared this earlier, so it will be quick, but it'll show you how to do it. So in the block that I just showed you for the header, I showed you that I was passing. I'll just make this a little bit. There we go. I showed you that I was passing the logo class, which you can find if you look in vendor. You can find how this all works. I won't do that now, but you can find out what classes you're going to need. You basically, if you look in vendor at the default XML for the theme module, that's your friend. That's how you're getting all your global objects, particularly when you're starting out working globally. And then that means then I can get from the block, I can get the logo source, and I can get the alt. And now there's many ways you can do this, and I wanted to try and do it in an unconventional way. So you can do this using Magento xinit tag, using require.js to pass data from front to JavaScript files. But funnily enough, you can also just do it with vanilla JavaScript. So what I was trying to do here conceptually was keep things as un-Magento as possible. It sounds daft, but it means I could probably do away with require.js for this if I'm starting from scratch, right? So I'm passing this as a data object, I'm passing the logo and the alt as a data object, and then at the other end I'm then able to pick up this information in my script tag in Svelte. So I'm able to get the header data from my header inner, which is the tag that I've attached them to. Then I'm going to get the data object as an object. I'm going to use data object as my variable here. I've passed it into JSON, so I'm getting the object. So it was called data object. Look, data object. So it's data object. So you don't use the data. It's data set object in your code in vanilla JavaScript. Obviously, you can use jQuery to do this. It's quite easy with jQuery doing this, but again, if I include jQuery in my Svelte app, that's another overhead. So I was trying to keep it as simple as possible, but you knock yourself out, do what you want. And then just an image tag. So if I stick this in, this is getting my logo, and then this could also get, if I want me to type this here, I use my curly braces, and I would say data object dot alt, because the other variable is the alt tag. And there we go. I'm getting the Magento logo there in my Svelte component. So that's pretty good, isn't it? So that means effectively you could get rid of, I mean, if you was, as I said earlier, I mentioned it earlier, if you was being really militant, you could get rid of parts of the header and start again and think, right, I'm going to build myself a brand new header. And the way you do that in default, just up here, look, you just remove it. So I'm removing the panel and the wrapper. I think that's not going to affect that. There we go. So this is essentially now the Svelte component is my header. So one more thing with regards to, as you probably noticed there, Tailwind is coming through, look, but it's not styled, it's not all of Tailwind, and that is because I missed out an important step. Right, so in here, in your Tailwind config, got a set config. Excuse me, windy pops. You got to set this into your config. Now I'm starting to get an error there, but it's styled. It's styled out. It's just giving me a warning. But you see, it's styled out. My Tailwind styles, sorry, is what I'm trying to say, are now coming through. So if I go into header and I change that to 64, for example, there we go. It makes the logo a bit bigger. So make sure that you go in and you specify the folder. Basically, if you're using it in your Svelte components, Tailwind predominantly, then you're going to need to compile it from there, and that is a step. I believe it might be in the docs. It's not in the docs. I saw it somewhere. I can't remember where I saw it, but yeah, passing it on to you. It's important, so don't forget that. So, you know, build away. Yeah, so I think that's about it for the scope of this video. It's been a solid half hour. I hope you stayed to the end. If you like this type of content, this sort of experimental conceptual Magento, that's probably no use to anybody, but you might learn a thing or two. If you do, smash a like on the video, comment, and subscribe is all I ask. So have a good day. See you in the next one.